So, this morning when I was writing, what came through was about the power of being in non judgment and the idea of confession. Now, for a lot of people, confession is a bit of a loaded word tied to religion. But what was coming through is that confession was never about saying, I should feel shame and I'm guilty about this. It was actually the opposite. It's about entering into a humility and being able to say, I did this thing and here's why. Or there are these parts of me that I sometimes struggle to accept. And let me be open about these. One, for the benefit of yourself, for you to accept those aspects and to bring them into the light and allow them to actually exist rather than resisting them. And two, it went into the aspects of what this does in the container of an intimate relationship and the gifts that it really allows for both people by being willing to enter into the vulnerability of that open share. So let's get into it. And then after, I'll dive into a little bit more of my thoughts around it. Witness all that you are without judgment and lean into the power of confession. The practice of confession allows for one to see parts of themselves that may need light shining on it. The willingness to confess these parts or behaviors requires a humility which accepts they are not perfect. Through this humility, there can be more ease around aspects of one's character that may need some attention to bring into the truth and to clarify. By seeing these parts without judgment of being wrong or less than, which is shame and guilt, they can be held as human traits that were likely formed long ago that show up unconsciously. When you can openly accept these parts, you don't feel like you have to defend your imperfections. They become less personal, and rather than being something you have to defend or prove, they can be accepted as part of your journey of growth and evolution. This self acceptance allows for the space to enter into self love, and with that, we can enter into the joy of being. And in that state, we can enter into an inner peace. A powerful practice with one's intimate partner can be confession. To fully own your shadow elements or behaviors openly gives you both the opportunity to see each other, to accept each other, and to love each other in full. Also, in being open and both the self acceptance and accepting of your partner, there is less feeling of the need to defend these parts of you that you might struggle to accept yourself or find it hard to believe that someone else would accept. It also allows for more space and understanding if that trait arises. The person who is feeling the emotion can be less attached when they have identified it openly without feeling like they need to defend it. And the other partner can also see what's happening and why, whilst also knowing that it's out in the open and is being worked on. This can give both partners more and more ease around the situation. Both people can separate the energy from the one who may be experiencing it. Nothing to defend and nothing to prove. If both people in a relationship are continually in the practice of self love and acceptance, and love and acceptance of their partner's shadow, there is more and more space with less judgment, less shame, less rejection, and less guilt. This creates a container of continual expanding love that holds the entirety of each other whilst both evolve and grow. More acceptance, more love, more understanding, more ease, and more peace. When this becomes the environment of the relationship and the environment of the home, these shadow elements become self harmonizing, self balancing, and self healing because it's shame that created these aspects in the first place. And it was always love and acceptance that was required to transmute these shadow elements back into the light of truth. So, what came up for me in that really was this aspect of deep self acceptance and how many of us still feel shame around parts of who we are. Even in the most intimate relationship we have with our significant other, how often do we feel like we have to defend certain parts of us because we haven't come to a point of self acceptance? Then, that way, if that characteristic, that trait, that shadow quality starts to arise, if you feel shame around that, it's actually going to add more charge, more energy, and actually more life to the very element that you don't want to arise. In doing that, you might feel the need to defend it if your partner points it out, and your defensiveness around it comes from a lack of acceptance of it. But what if in that container there was this idea of confession? Now, for some people, that's a bit of a loaded word. It might be tied to religion and a feeling of oppression around the idea of having to confess your sins from this place of shame and guilt. What if confession was more about sharing the parts of you that you feel shame around, that you struggle to accept? And sometimes I might get defensive around these things. Maybe sometimes if my partner mentions a certain thing that I did, and that's actually a part of me that I've not yet integrated and accepted, I then feel the need to defend it, which then bothers them. And then we start to create this downward spiral. And it all came from a defensiveness and actually not having this open, honest dialogue about these parts. What if in our relationships we were really open and just said, hey, I just want you to know that there are these parts of myself, these beliefs that I have that I feel some shame around. Sometimes I feel a bit embarrassed or I feel guilty around these things. And I want to have them out in the open because I want to come from a place of self acceptance and I want to share them to see if you can also accept those in me. And imagine having that conversation with your beloved, with your significant other. One, in that vulnerability, it shows a huge amount of trust. And if you are with someone that is trustworthy and is operating from a place of love, in them seeing that, imagine how it feels to know that someone else that you love can love you, even with those parts that you struggle to accept. There's a really powerful thing that can take place here between your acceptance of those parts by being willing to share them and the knowing that someone that you love can also accept those in you. If you've had the belief that you struggle to accept them and you believe that no one else could accept those parts of you, what happens when you no longer feel the need to defend them with your partner because you've come to a place of acceptance about them and you realize it isn't actually you? It's not you, it's just a characteristic. Maybe it's a shadow element that formed from some earlier time in life, but you can identify it. And a part of a high self esteem is not just about accepting your good parts, it's about being able to accept the parts of you that you may have felt shame or guilt around in the past, but by saying, hey, I've got these things going on and I'm working on them. I'm paying attention to them. And I want you to know about these because sometimes I might get a bit defensive in these ways. I don't want you to think it's about you. In that share, in that vulnerability, as your partner accepts that, I think a miraculous thing happens. The work that you think you need to do on those things starts to take care of itself. Because you see, these shadow qualities or elements that we have come from parts of ourselves that we've actually rejected or abandoned. And when those parts feel split off, like they aren't allowed to be here, it creates more charge where they then come out in this shadow characteristic. The thing those parts actually always needed was to be accepted and to be loved. So, through the self acceptance, through the acceptance of your partner, through the self love and the love of your partner, it creates self healing, self orienting, and a self balancing environment where these parts now no longer show up in their shadow. So, there's this ironic situation that occurs that through the willingness to accept these parts, the willingness to be open about them, to shine light on it, not to hide these things away as a part of you that you feel shame around. Through this self acceptance, your significant other has the opportunity to accept it, to love you, to be understanding. And in that container of love, of empathy, of compassion, of understanding, of space for growth and evolution, the self harmonizing, the self healing aspects of love are going to take place. So, this for me was a really beautiful little writing that came through that I can just see how I want to implement this in my own intimate relationship. Immediately, it made me think I need to write down a list of things that I might sometimes be defensive around and haven't been completely forthcoming about and may have touched on them slightly before, but to be truly forthcoming because I know my partner really does love, adore me. And if I can share these things openly with her and allow her the chance to see me, I'm actually allowing her more of a chance to love me completely in my entirety. And that is one, a gift to offer her, but also like what an amazing gift to offer to myself. So let me know what you think about this idea of viewing yourself with non-judgment, of reducing shame, reducing guilt, and confessing. And if you don't like that word, we can just say talking openly about these parts. Or maybe it even is about a way in which you acted this week and going into, hey, I know I reacted this way and it seemed like it was for this reason. And I know I said it was because you did this, but actually, here's what was going on for me. When this thing happened, it brought up this feeling. And I actually feel embarrassed or shameful around this certain thing. And in doing that, just having that open dialogue, imagine the trust that fosters in a relationship. Imagine how it can really allow those two people to enter into a sacred union that really is about seeing each other in their entirety and having the opportunity to fully love every single aspect of your partner. When I think about this, I think, what other type of relationship would you rather be in? But let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this something that you could do? It requires huge amounts of vulnerability, and sometimes on the other side of that vulnerability, that pain that you might have to go through in being vulnerable and being stripped bare is the ultimate freedom and liberation. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do that. And lastly, if you know someone you think would get good value from this, please consider sharing the video. All right, thank you so much for being here, watching this through until the end. If you want to find me on Instagram, the link is going to be below. And also, if you'd like to find out about the 6-month masterminds that I facilitate, helping guide deep, profound inner transformation in the members, there's also going to be a link for you to check out more about that and schedule a call if you would like to have a conversation with me and find out more about it. All right, until next time, much love.